What's up guys, Cloudie here, checking in after a bit of a hiatus this week where sadly I was sick and couldn't really be making any videos, but now we can actually continue. And first and foremost, some of you might have already seen, I have been selected to be one of the Sea Raiders this season along with Shell, Valella and Flynn, so congratulations to them. And of course I want to thank you guys for all the continued love and support you have been showing. It really makes making these videos worth, so thank you so much. And now if you're wondering how this all segues into our video today, yesterday I have received an email from our very own GM Gremory just informing me about the Sea Raider stuff, and yeah, in appreciation of that, today we are gonna be talking about Gremory, the insolent disaster, one of the primal demons, and one of the better heroes on the magic end of the spectrum. I have done a review of her shortly after her initial release, but back then Vespa kind of released her with this support assassin kind of thing in mind, and she wasn't really performing too well. She had a good kit, but she just wasn't really living up to how a good hero should be. And then not long ago she received a revamp, a balance patch. It was like in February or January, I think. Anyway, and that made her into the true monster that she is in the lore. So let's go through what she can actually do, how she performs, and so on and so on. So let's check her skills first, then we will check the talents and then the unique gears, and talk about how she does in certain stages and whatnot. First and foremost, I think her S4 is the really interesting one, because this is a pretty unique mechanism that we have in the game. No other character works like this. So after using either of her active skills, that skill becomes sealed, which is mentioned here, and cannot be used until she uses up all three of her skills. When this option becomes available, whatever, I'm gonna sleep, and when you use that skill, she will dispel CC effects from herself, go to sleep actually, and while she's sleeping, she gains immunity to CC, takes 40% reduced all damage, and unlocks her sealed skills. Every time she uses this ability, she gains a mana charge stack. Each mana charge stack increases Gremory's damage dealt to enemies by 2% and attack by 10%. And this can be stacked up to 5 times and is irremovable. And of course the skill books will increase this by 3%, so she gets 5% damage dealt to enemies for every stack, so goes up to 25% and 50% attack. Also her soul weapon at A2 will increase this to 7 stacks, so she gets even more damage buff and attack buff. So that's a pretty strong passive ability right off the bat, and she gets even better as we look at her. So let's check her skills in a row then. Her first skill, as you can see, it has no cooldown because it gets sealed right after use. So this is a 3 mana skill called Pochi Bite Them. Attacks an enemy 5 times, dealing some damage. This is a pretty high amount of damage actually compared to most skills in the game, and inflicting Pochi's mark each hit. The damage of each hit increases by 15% per every stack of mana charge, so what she gets from going to sleep, and Pochi's mark reduces the target's attack by 6% for 15 seconds, and it can be stacked up to maximum 5 times. So you can see if you have a single enemy, this hits 5 times, that's a 30% attack reduction for 15 seconds, and in 15 seconds, if she has enough mana, she can easily cycle through her skills. So that's pretty much permanent, and she doesn't need to do anything for that. So right off the bat, we have a 30% attack reduction, basically without any investment in her. That's pretty cool. If the target is a boss, each hit deals an additional damage. The additional damage increases by 30% per every stack of mana charge. So the base damage increases by 15%, and the additional boss damage increases by 30% per every stack of mana charge. This is pretty dope. It just before the patch, this has a talent that makes it also ignore defense, and before the patch that also made her do half damage with this skill. That was removed, so she kind of kept this good scaling but also received ignore defense with it, which is powerful. This is a monster of a skill when you're fighting a single boss, and one of her strongest skills in the game. Now let's see her S2. 3 mana again, so that's like 6 mana to use 2 skills. Attacks the farthest enemy from behind, inflicting Pucci's mark on the target, dealing ram damage and inflicting stun for 5 seconds. Pucci's mark reduces the target's M-block chance by 500 for 12 seconds. This skill is sealed. This skill isn't that interesting for the most part in PvE, except for this part where it can reduce the M-block chance of the target enemy. And with a perk, this can actually reduce the block chance to 0. So in certain contents like Siegfried or the Shakmei battles, this can be pretty useful because the enemy just won't block. This is also attacking the farthest enemy, so if you were to take her into PvP, then it could be useful, although I'm not quite sure I would be using this too much. And I'm also not really sold on her being a PvP unit, but we will get to that later. And then her S3 skill, PP Wrap Them. This is a 4 mana skill. So all in all, her 3 active skills are 4 mana. That's a lot actually. Or sorry, 4 mana plus 2 times 3 mana, so 10 mana. Yeah. So deals damage over 10 times to the target enemies within a large area, inflicting PP's mark on hit targets each hit. If this skill is damage to a target inflicted with 10 stacks of PP's mark, so basically if you double cast it, each hit deals additional magic damage that ignores defense. So basically she has an ignore defense single target boss killer ability, and she can have an ignore defense AoE ability, which is just nuts. It does so much damage, guys, it's crazy. And this skill got a bit of a rework during the balance patch, and that's when she received, I believe that's when she received the ignore defense part, and also the damage was increased. And if that wasn't enough, the PP's mark increases the magic damage the target takes by 5%, and this stacks up 10 times, so that's a 50% magic damage buff each time this skill is cast. 12 seconds uptime. Well, if you have the mana, she can keep this up fairly easily, so that's also pretty good. So as you can see, she does need a lot of mana to cast her skills, but she doesn't have any cooldowns, which is also interesting because that means she can't really abuse the audio reset, which is one of the big things when you want to score high in places. But due to her kit being the way it is, she doesn't really need that. So yeah, she's quite nice. Let's look at her Transcendence perk. So there are a few ways to build her. Of course, the standard assassin perks, and then let's see what we have in the normal palette. So right off the bat, when there is one enemy, additional magic damage that the bosses ignores defense. So yeah, that's a lot of ignore defense damage there right off the bat. The other option is that additionally reduces magic defense. So if she was a support role somewhere and fighting something that can actually be magic defense shredded, then this would be an interesting perk. Otherwise, as a main damage dealer, this will be what she uses anyway. Moving on, the M-block chance reduction effect of Pucci's marks will fix M-block chance to 0 instead. So yeah, this is what you would use in Siegfried or in, say, the Shakmei battles if you are having trouble with the mana management. Knocking the target away instead of inflicting stun. So I guess this is more of a PvP thing, because this would mean that you could use her to like pull in the farthest enemy towards your front line where you might have more CC or someone else doing the killing. So a PvP thing really. I don't really see where I would use this in PvE. Moving on, reduces the mana cost by 1, so makes the 4 mana skill to 3 mana. Maybe PvP, I guess, if you wanted to cast this faster. Instead, there is another option here, increases mana cost by 1 and damage by 100%. So, for instance, if you were to run Sky Trial with her, then this would be pretty good to kill the totems. But of course, you have to make this now, instead of a 4 mana skill, a 5 mana skill, which is a lot. Then let's see, increases all damage reduction effect by 20% while in use. So while she's sleeping, instead of getting 40% damage reduction, she would have 60. I'm not sure where I would need this. Maybe I could see like Shock Me if you wanted to sleep through the Radiance because you are immune to CC and you would take less damage. That would be interesting perhaps. Otherwise, I don't know. But this one is also is a lot more interesting actually. At the beginning of each battle, whatever comes, whatever I'm gonna sleep becomes activated. So she comes into the battle in her sleeping mode, and remember this resets her skills actually, so even if you only used one of her skills, everything will be reset, and this is pretty useful for multi-stage fights. Again, for instance, if you were to run Shock Me or Eclipse, where she is currently one of the most powerful characters, but also if you just wanted to stack her buffs that much faster, like if you were having troubles in Sky Trial, then you could start in this mode and then she would already have 1 mana charge right off the bat. Not to mention that this can protect her from the very first solar wave, which can hit you before you apply like attack down effects on the boss. So this is pretty useful to have. I quite like it. I have it in my base build. Gremory Dark increases damage dealt to non-hero enemies by 50% when there is one enemy. So yeah, just like 50% non-hero damage, because she has like normal damage increase and boss damage, and yeah, why not? It's like balanced. Alright, and her light perk gives her the usual attack, defense, HP and some additional crit chance. Speaking of crit chance, we can have a look at her stats then, because we already looked at all her perks. Crit chance, she can roll without 65%, with about 65%, if you are taking Opportune Strike, and how much crit you have kind of depends on what you will be running, because for instance in Sky Trial, if you have an Unnet, you can have like a 25% crit chance increase, so that's alright. In say Eclipse, you will probably have a Priest for 15%, so this is about the number that you want to shoot for. Mine is actually having not too much crit, because 75% plus this already puts her at 85. So whenever I have like an Unnet with her, she's already overcat, but it's whatever. Yeah, so these are the perks. You could take this one for the 20% attack and some depth penetration, but most of her main damage is actually ignore defense, so maybe not too worth. And in a support role, you might even pick up this one. So that's mainly how I would choose her stats. Other than that, it's like fairly typical DPS build. She is really mana hungry, so I actually have a second rune page for her, which has 2 mana runes, because I don't like reforging TM gears too much. I think with 800 mana she can more or less roll her skills pretty fast, but then again it matters what team setup you are running. Do you have Estelle? Do you have like Lovril? Do you have a Share? These are good friends of her because they give her a lot of mana and some other buffs. After that, of course, you want to have the crit chance, and you want to have a lot of attack. She gets a lot of speed from her unique weapon, so she won't need that. I like to have a little bit of lifesteal, which I have her on her unique treasures. And a little bit of crit damage will be nice, because in her strongest scenarios where you will use her, she will probably not be getting a Lovril like in Sky Trial. So yeah, a little bit of crit damage can do well for her. So let's check actually what the gears look like. Ignore defense, of course, is very good. I would go with like 2 or 3 pieces, and then either stacking damage or the 95 above 95 health damage increase is also good. I have to ignore defense, I believe, and yeah, well, this one is like reduces all defense and increases attack. This one is alright, not the best option, but it's what I got so far. Okay, let's go on to her unique gears then. So unique weapon increases attack speed by 500 at 5 stars. Upon using whatever I'm gonna sleep, Gremory heals HP equal to 50% of her max HP and recovers mana by 50% over 2 seconds. So technically she heals herself and regains some mana during these when she goes to sleep, but so she could actually roll without lifesteal, but I like to have some lifesteal just for emergencies, and you can see all of these skills with the star of her unique weapon. Now, unique treasures, this is also an interesting part. The pillow one is her main unique treasure. If you are rolling her as a DPS, this increases the damage by Pochi by them and Pochi mark. Additionally reduces the hue rate of the target by 6%, and this is at 4 stars. Let's just see how this scales. So this is 6% always. Remember, this stacks 5 times, so goes to 30%, and then the whole skill will increase by 50% at 5 stars. So this is her main single target nuke. If you want her to be a DPS, this will be what you want to have. Moving on, this is her S2. So increases CC ACC by 300 for the duration of skill and dispels positive effects from the target. This actually sounds exactly the same as what Lucikia's S2 unique treasure does. PvP use, I don't see why I would want this anywhere else. It's a stat stick. I wouldn't really invest in it. Let's see the other one. This should be her unique treasure 3. Increases the duration of PP's mark by 8 seconds, so keeping up the magic damage buff on the enemies should be a much easier with this, and the damage boost effect will also increase. We can check how this actually scales up. So this goes up to 3%, and that means that instead of 50%, this becomes then 80%, I believe. So as a supporter, this could be good, or if you were using her in some AoE heavy scenario. Otherwise, I would kind of stick with the unique treasure one. I think that's what she will use the most. And then the final one increases damage reduction effect by 20% for the duration of skill, and mana charge additionally increases crit damage by 4%. So with 7 stacks, that would be 28. Yeah. Well, whatever. That's not too much, I guess. Technically, she could go to like 80% damage reduction, but I don't know where you would want that really. That sounds quite monstrous, but I'm not sure where that would be useful really. So finally, let's look at her soul weapon. So with the power of the gateway to purgatory Pigritia, Gremory transforms into her true form, so she becomes the demon that she's in the demon realm. Attacks enemies within a wide frontal range 2 times, dealing damage. After that, she lets out a roar, dealing damage, and each stack of mana charge increases the damage of the soul weapon by 20%. So she can do damage with the soul weapon itself. It doesn't give her any buffs, but the damage is pretty low compared to other soul weapons. This is actually a terrible roll, but I suck at rerolling soul weapons. But yeah, so technically, as far as I know, it's not worth using her. That's what, like, say, Rhea was telling me, that you never use her soul weapon because it's a damage loss. Essentially, at advancement phase 1, this increases the damage done by 80% and is still not worth using. And then at advancement phase 2, this is where you get the additional stacks of mana charge, so you can go up to 7 instead of 5. Which means it's pretty nice. 7 stacks means more damage, more attack. It's just a really good thing to have. But she is quite capable even without an A2 soul weapon. Of course, if you want her to be a main DPS, you want her to be A220, because that's where the real damage comes from. So all in all, she has a lot of goodies in her kit, both as a supporter, where she can be a very low invest supporter, but now after her revamp, she has the option to be one of the best magic DPS. Actually, for a ranged DPS slot, I would actually consider her maybe the best that we have right now. She gets attack speed, so she doesn't need any of that, and this helps. I think this was also added in her balance patch, because without the attack speed, her cast times are just really long, so that helps her a lot. Again, Mana requirement depends on where you run her. She is perhaps the best Sky Trial clearer right now, because that massive ignore defense AoE followed by the single target boss nuke, you can technically one round clear Sky Trial with it, which is pretty funny. And perfectly balanced. Due to her repeatable skills with this Transcendence perk, she is, and again, AoE damage combined with single target nuke, she is one of the best Eclipse runners right now. She could be used in Vel'Khazar, but she's having troubles with Cascade, so she kinda needs a supporter for that. And I don't think with the new Vel'Khazar she is viable anymore. She could kill before, like when it was 50T that you needed to hit. Right now, I don't think so, or even 200T. I think there was a video where someone did like 160, 170 with her, so she could be used. But I think nowadays, where you have a lot higher, since Vel'Khazar can no longer be killed, and you can have like very large numbers. I think even my guildies were, or some of my friends and guildies were reporting 700 and 800 trill runs, so I'm not quite sure if she can get there. She can be used in the both Shakmei battles, but traditionally ignore defense heroes don't do too well there. However, because she also has good scaling, she is not terrible either, and she's very good at clearing the ways, for instance, before small Shakmei, so again, that's a good thing. World bosses aren't quite her thing. It's just that her kit doesn't really support that. She isn't terrible. She can perform okay, but she will not be getting you like to the top spot, so that's the expectation to be had with her, I think. And she is generally very good at farming anything. She can be a bit slow, a bit mana hungry. I think it's good to have at least like 400 mana per sec in her build. This is for Sky Trial, where you have a very short time to cast a 5 mana skill 2 times in a row, so that's why I have this setup. But yeah, this is basically Gremory. Insane damage, good attack down, healing reduction, magic damage amp, block reduction, a loaded kit for a DPS who is doing insane DPS, and pretty much the crown queen of Sky Trial right now. So yeah, this has been Gremory, guys. I hope you liked. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And this has been Cloudie for now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.